I'm Greg Hubert, founder and president of Crimson Cloud Coffee and Tea, and also the chair of the Innovation and Transformation Council at the Columbus Chamber. So before we get started, we host some events, but I want to know who's been at our Innovation Lab before? Okay, that's a good amount of you. Thank you for coming again. And for those who haven't been here, this is our cool space, one of our cool spaces. Just so you know, it's the only SCA certified facility in Ohio, that's Specialty Coffee Association certified facility in Ohio, which means that we can teach and train at the highest levels. We have 2 Q graders, which is kind of similar to sommelier in the wine industry. Also, Q graders are certification in the coffee industry. We have 2 of those on staff, which is kind of unheard of. One of our Q graders is what we do is we source coffee from around the world. One of our Q graders right now is in Africa, so he's going to be traveling through Ethiopia, Uganda, some other places throughout, and searching, finding so that we can come up with fantastic coffee all the time. So that's this notice. So we innovate on a whole bunch of different products, whether that's coffee, tea, syrups, sauces, powders, anything inside of a coffee shop, we do for now, and then we're going to be innovating on a whole bunch of other products in the future too. So that's kind of a little bit about what we do. Our roasting facility is right down the street, so we have 2 Allen Creek addresses. So they have big roasters there, if anybody's interested in seeing big roasters and a lot of coffee being roasted, they're down there. And we have another facility in Canal, Winchester as well. So I started Crimson Cup in 1991. It's been, since we're on the subject of growth, it's been wonderful growth for me, except for 2 years. We didn't grow in COVID 2020 or in Great Recession 2009. But other than that, we've been pretty good, and I have the scars to prove it. And today we're going to be, it's really exciting. Because we have some city experts who are going to talk about how we're going to maintain some of the things that we love in Columbus. So our commute, I come across town, it takes me 14 minutes to commute here to this office. Unbelievable. It just doesn't happen in too many major cities at all. We got wonderful airport, very welcoming, quick, easy, fast. We got wonderful parks. We got collaborative business environment. We have so many different things here in Columbus, and obviously with growth comes challenges. So how do we mitigate those challenges? How do we take advantage of those challenges along the way? So that's what you're going to be hearing more of today. And obviously that takes innovative thought, collaborativeness, and a lot of hard work. So now I'd like to introduce our moderator, a good friend of mine, President and CEO of the Columbus Chamber, Don McCarthy.
Thank you, Greg. And Greg's far too modest to say, but Crimson Cup is the largest distributor of coffee beans to independent coffee houses in the United States. So whenever you go to a community, the S Coffee Company is fine, but when you go to a family-owned coffee shop or a small chain, community chain, odds are some of those coffee beans came from right here off Elmwood Creek Drive, which is absolutely fantastic. So thank you, Greg. Thank you for your leadership over these last several years with innovation and transformation. It's been great, and look, I hate to tell you, but we may be outgrowing your space pretty soon, which is all great. Let me start by bringing up our 4 esteemed panelists, who we're thrilled to have with us this morning, and then we'll get right into the conversation. I'll bring you up individually, and I think you know where you're going to sit, so that's great. Dave Dixon. Dave is the Director of Data Analytics and Strategy at MORPC. MORPC is our Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission. MORPC is like the Chamber of Commerce for government entities. And you're probably close to about 100 different municipalities now that are 95 to 100 that are members of MORPC. David. Hold your applause, and then we'll thank and welcome all of our panelists. Kristen Easterday. Kristen is Director of Communications and Public Affairs at our Columbus Regional Airport Authority. Kristen. Matt McAllister. Matt is the Executive Vice President of One Columbus. One Columbus is our economic development juggernaut here in Central Ohio, and they are part of the Jobs Ohio Regional Economic Development Organizations that brings all of these great companies into the Columbus region. And Asleen Rodriguez. Asleen is Senior Director of Regional and Strategic Partnerships for CODA, our Central Ohio Transit Authority, which had a big victory last Tuesday in the election, and we're going to have a great benefit from that over the next couple of decades. Will you join me in welcoming Dave, Kristen, Matt, and Asleen? Great. Hey, big secret here. The Columbus region is undergoing significant growth. Significant growth. How about if each of you share what you see as our biggest opportunity as well as our biggest challenge facing the Columbus region over the next 5 to 10 years. Dave, we'll start with you. We'll go right down the line.
All right, thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming out. And first, I'll do a little bit of level setting. So you heard I'm a data director, so I like to look at charts and numbers. So one thing I want to say is that this growth, this level of growth is not new to the Columbus region. We have had steady, manageable growth for decades, and that's what our forecasts show for decades to come. And that is something to get excited about, because that means you have time to take advantage of the opportunities that growth brings before growth kind of happens to you. So, in terms of what I see next 5, 10 years, in terms of biggest challenges and opportunities, I would boil it down to housing, wealth, and health. And within each of those, we have an opportunity to address some past inequities and disparities. So at Morpsey, when we're working on these things collaboratively with all the communities you mentioned, coming together, talking about this, we ask, how can we get better as we grow bigger, right? So we don't just want to grow bigger, we want to look at how can we be even better than we are today. So if I was forced to choose, you said, biggest opportunity, I would say housing, because it connects to so much of what we do. We need workforce housing, we need enough housing to continue to attract all those workers from around the country and around the world to come to Columbus. And as you look at that chart, and you look at the growth that we expect, 3.15 million people by 2050, increasingly those new neighbors are going to come from elsewhere around the country and around the world. And so one way that we can continue to maintain our advantages and keep that growth going is to address housing.
Great. And we're at about, what, 2.4, closing in on 2.4 million right now?
Yep, our 2024 estimate was right.
And that's for the 11 county region?
That is actually for the Morpsey 15 county region.
Thank you.
We always make sure we don't leave any of our counties out.
Kristen.
Thank you, John, and thank you all for being here. It's great to be here and talk to you about the Airport Authority and with my panelists about all the great stuff going on around the community. So before I start with saying maybe what our challenge and opportunity is, can I just show of hands, who has flown out of the airport, either John, Glenn, or Rickenbacker in the past year? Wow, nearly all of you. If you were the one person that did not raise your hand, you need a vacation. But thank you, because you are the opportunity. You are part of our record-breaking growth. This year will be our best year on record. You heard it here first. I am forecasting it to be our best year on record at the airport. So thank you for flying. And really, that's our opportunity, is to make sure that we are growing with the community, and not just by size, but by efficiency, continuing to make the facility as quick and efficient. As Greg said, we have a great airport. We don't want to diminish on the efficiency that we already have. We want to just continue to make it better. But we have the opportunity with a new facility to make it what it needs to be for our passengers today and in the future. You would never build a facility with 3 different concourses, 3 security checkpoints, now here in the post-9/11 world. So we have the opportunity to make it more efficient, as well as make it grow with our community. So I think that's our biggest opportunity. And I think our challenge is making sure that we do things right. We have a fiscal responsibility to the community to also not make things too big, too fast. We want to make sure that we are self-sustaining. One of the great things about the airport, we don't take taxpayer dollars to operate. We don't, have property taxes or anything like that. We're self-sustaining. So we want to make sure that we're operating the best way that we can to attract the most airlines to provide the most routes for you, our passengers. So I think that's our opportunity and our challenge.
Matt?
First off, thank you for having me. Boy, this is a loaded question. I don't have just one. But I think our biggest opportunity is to continue to grow. And I say that because it's also part of our challenge. We have a lot of, especially in our suburban markets, a lot of no growth or low growth sentiment. We have housing projects through the referendum. We have industrial development in parts of our community that have been referendum. If you're not sure what a referendum is, it's basically when it's been approved by council or by trustees, and basically, they gather enough signatures to put it on a ballot, and it becomes a ballot issue on whether or not the community wants this development. And so we've had a number of projects referendum. I would say that housing is definitely a critical part of our ability to grow. We peaked in 2002 with the number of units that were permitted in our region. It was about 16,000 units permitted in 2002. We've not hit more than 12,500 since. We need to be at 16 to 18,000 units per year in order just to maintain our current growth trajectory. So we're getting behind the 8 ball on our housing, and it's going to be a big issue. And if we can't have housing, we won't have job growth because people have to have a place to go home in the evening. John Melkai from the BIA basically says a home is where a job goes in the evening. That's true. So that's probably our biggest opportunity, is if we want to continue to grow, it's ours to have. But we have to make sure that we put in place and address the challenges that are going to prohibit our ability to grow.
Well, our biggest opportunity happened on Tuesday with issue 47. COTA was on the ballot, and what you'll see on the screen here is we're the 14th largest city in the United States, and we don't have the 14th largest city transit to match it. It's not a secret, right? I work at COTA, it's okay to say that. But this is the vision for 2050, and to welcome the growth that we anticipate. We're expanding, so we would expand service, one of which is our current on-street, what we call our fixed route. But then we would also increase, have any of you experienced COTA Plus? It's our on-demand service. So it works like Uber and Lyft. You would download COTA Plus, and but it's geographically bound. So what you'll see in the upper right-hand corner, there's those little gray boxes. Those are our COTA Plus zones: Westerville, Grove City, and the South Side. It's $3, flat fee, doesn't surge, point to point. And so we have a ton of folks using it. We have our seniors using it, students using it, and folks who need to get to work. You do not have to live in that community in order to use it. So again, you download it, same interface as Uber and Lyft. There'll be 8 new zones that, in total there'll be 11 zones that'll be across the region when this is all said and done. There'll also be 5 rapid transit corridors. So they are, I call them a subway above ground. And so you'll see the navy blue lines are the first 3 that have been identified, and that's West Broad going from Prairie Township to downtown, and downtown going out to Reynoldsburg, and then downtown going up to Dublin. The Dublin OU campus is that stop there. 2 more are to be identified in this plan, but it works again like a subway above ground. Dedicated lanes, signal prioritization, off-board fare collection. So when you're on a subway, right, they collect your fare, you go through the turnstile, and you board. Seamless boarding, so level platform. Today, if you were to board our vehicle, we collect the fare on the vehicle, and if you have a mobility device, we have to lower the vehicle in order to accommodate that, which takes time. There'll be 2 to 3 entrances on the vehicle, and you'll board seamlessly. It's an articulated vehicle, so it has that accordion in the middle. And for any of you who are cyclists, you would board the vehicle with your actual bike, and then you would rack inside the vehicle. And so a lot of cities are moving to this because this is 1/6 of the cost of light rail. So what we could have afforded with light rail would have been like 1.5 light rail stations, corridors, if you will, whereas in this plan, we could afford 5 of them. So that's the future of it, in addition to more sidewalks, more connected bikeways and trails. So you may never ride our system, but you may walk on a sidewalk that was paid for through this initiative, or get on a bike trail, or on a dedicated protected bike lane because of this. And so the opportunity for us is making sure that we build it on time, like we're saying we're going to build it, and making sure that we work hand in glove with housing, because when you build transit, housing comes along, but we want to make sure that the housing, as much as we can influence it, that it's equitable for people along those high transit corridors.
Outstanding. $8 billion. And we're really excited. My only question is, where were you 30 years ago? As someone who's been commuting from Dublin to downtown for 29 full years. Aislinn, you kind of answered our second question. From each of your vantage points, what innovative strategies are currently being implemented to support the growth throughout our region? How about from Morrissey's standpoint?
I would say that we are being very innovative in terms of looking at how we can leverage what we have and how we can leverage what we expect to come down the pipe here. And pointing to Lake Gus as an example, I've also heard the buses described as light rail on wheels, right? As a subway above ground. And you think about that, and it's like, with the housing density that we have, with the ridership that we have, how do we provide this massively improved service and a new way of getting around? And when you look at going to rubber instead of rail, you can provide a lot more service for the same dollars, right? So when she talks about those 5 corridors, and there's a lot more to it than that, we're also shifting our mindset. Morrissey does a lot of work in transportation, as do our community partners, from moving vehicles to moving people, right? So you've probably heard of this. We need to move people, not cars. So one way to do that, we look at a project we've been deeply involved with, is what we call TSI, Transit Supportive Infrastructure. That's for everyone. That's sidewalks, bikeways, trails. Whether you ever get on the bus or not, that's going to benefit you. We're looking at doubling the rate that we add sidewalks and trails between now and 2050. Now this is passed. That's a big deal. There's a slide on here that I think shows we're looking at 150 approximately miles just in the next 5 years. And so if you're a transit rider, every trip starts and stops walking or biking to that bus. If you're a resident in the neighborhood and you just want better ways to get around, you want multi-use paths, it's bringing that to you as well. Another way that I think that we stand out is, you've probably heard of the Columbus Way. And I see this every day. I see big communities, small communities, rural communities, urban communities coming together, sharing their ideas, sharing their challenges, sharing resources. It's highly collaborative, right? And so whether you're looking at folks addressing housing, come in with new downtown plans like you see out in Heath, or you look at what's going on in Dublin, or with Zone In in the city of Columbus, these are really inspiring initiatives where, again, folks are looking at where they're starting and finding a way to get there, finding a way to make it better. And that could look different in Columbus than it does in some of our smaller towns. But to me, that's inspiring. And I think the key is that we all keep working together, keep collaborating, keep talking.
Kristen, you mentioned the project for the Regional Airport Authority, $2 billion new terminal. I'm sure that's part of your answer there. And how is that going to help support the continued growth in our region?
Well, I would say first and foremost that $2 billion number didn't exist about 8 years ago. So that's the first thing that we're doing, is we're bringing a huge project. Now, one of many, right? If we were on this stage about 10 years ago, it would have been the only billion-dollar project probably, but now we're one of many billion-dollar projects in the region. So this is good for our community, right? It's new business growth. We want to support local businesses through this project. But there's a lot of other innovative things, maybe not at the macro level that we were just discussing, but there are a lot of innovative things in the new terminal. And we don't know what the future of air travel is going to look like, right? I don't have a crystal ball, but we can make sure that our facility is as flexible as possible. So that's one of the things that we are looking to do. Making sure, I know this doesn't sound necessarily sexy or innovative, but it is very intentional and thoughtful. There are no columns throughout the concourses. So it is completely open. That means that as airlines grow or shrink, we are able to easily accommodate them without having to spend millions of dollars to move them to a whole other concourse or whatnot. It also is intuitive wayfinding. It's also so everybody can see everything, feel more relaxed. I mean, there are so many maybe not sexy things that we are going to be implementing, but everything from LEED silver we're looking to achieve. So one of the things that you'll notice, there's a lot of glass in the new terminal building. And so what we've done with that glass is we want everybody to see out and be able to see the skyline. But sometimes it's sunny in Columbus and sometimes it's not, right? So we want to make sure that there are these, like, it's called electrochromatic, but it's these things that are inside the glass that will actually make it like your rear view mirror when you're driving. So you will actually, it will tint it when it's too bright to alleviate some of that heat coming in, or glare if you're, on your phone while you're waiting for your plane, and vice versa in the evening. It will let in more light. So that'll help with heating costs. It'll be better for the atmosphere for you as a passenger. So there's a lot of like little things that we're working on within the terminal facility to also make it innovative.
Matt, I mean, Amgen, Pharmavite, the list goes on and on and on. And then the penultimate project, certainly what will become the largest economic development project in the state of Ohio. And what may be, if all of those fabs are constructed someday, the largest economic development project in the history of the United States, Intel. How do you keep the momentum going?
Well, I think that there's a couple things. One is maybe from an innovation standpoint and how we actually landed Intel is really from Jobs Ohio, which is our state partner, all the way down to the local New Albany level. We had to have an understanding, cooperation, unbelievable cooperation, believe me, to get this project across the line. And I think that's one of the innovative things that we do in economic development in the state of Ohio, specifically in the Columbus region. This network that we have of all our local partners, it could have landed elsewhere. It landed in New Albany because they had the right site, they were the right partner at the right time. They also had the right infrastructure. They had proven that they could land a project at that scale, not because they had historically, but because they had landed a number of data centers. Heavy power users, heavy water users. Those are two of the key things that Intel needed, water and electricity. So while there wasn't a single project yet that was the magnitude, they had a multitude of various projects in a concentrated area that proved they could do it. They had state support from ODOT, obviously all the extensions going on 161 right now, everything up Beach Road, it's been an effort that really has tested the innovative system, and I think we proved we can do it. So that's one of the things I would say is key. I can tell you our pipeline though still remains very strong. We have projects right now that could potentially exceed the initial job requirement of Intel. Now, if they build out all their fabs and they have 12,000 people there, that will obviously be the largest. But we've got some exceeding 3,000 jobs in our pipeline right now. And so I think that that's another thing that I would just say from maybe the micro and macro perspective. On a large scale, the system we have in place to attract new industries is definitely a secret sauce for us, and we've proven it can work. Maybe on the more internal perspective, though, we leverage a lot of tools. So now that we have Intel, for example, now that Honda LG is just outside of our region, 12 miles south of our region, we're using a lot of data sources to understand who their supply chain is, going out proactively to talk to them. And also, there's other projects that come along with facilities like this. This is a chip fab. You have to package the chip. So they're going to just send it somewhere to be packaged. Who do we do packaging here? It's going to be a foundry services, meaning they're not going to just produce stuff that says Intel on it. They're going to be producing stuff at this facility that has other people's name on it. And one of the big announcements about a month ago was they signed a multi-year, multi-billion-dollar deal with AWS to produce chips for Amazon Web Services. So this will be their first foray really into foundry services. Those chips are going to be built in New Albany. So, you know, they've got a client now, they've got a plan, they've got a bunch of money invested in the ground. I feel confident this is going to come forward. I think the question is it going to have Intel's name on it or not? Is someone going to come along and buy their foundry services from them? Or are they going to say, well, we're going to shift into foundry services, maybe we'll sell our Intel business? So there's all kinds of things up in the air right now about what's going to happen. But I feel confident that we're definitely happen fast.
Kathleen, they will start with over 3,000 permanent jobs there in the next couple of years when the initial two fabs come online. Will CODA provide bus service to those and move employees there?
So if you go back to the CODA slide, as I mentioned, there's 5 rapid transit lines, corridors, and 3 have only been identified. There's 2 more. It's not hard to imagine that one of the 3rd or 4th or 5th would be up to that New Albany area, going from downtown up to the airport, up to New Albany. But we do end at the Licking County line, and so we are working with Licking County Transit. In fact, their executive director was our previous chief of operations. And so we are working with Licking County to have that connectivity so that when this does open up, there is a seamless ride from anywhere in Columbus to Licking County with possibly 1 transfer in total, and perhaps not even 1 transfer.
Hey, Don, can I add something to that?
Right ahead.
So you mentioned 3,000 jobs. Those are direct jobs.
Right.
You know, we've done an assessment, and we've assessed it would be a 7 to 8 times multiplier. So 7 jobs for every single primary job Intel will be generated in the general vicinity. This includes everything from suppliers to dry cleaners to, you know, gas station attendants, everything. But that's going to be 21 to 24,000 people that will need to be moving in and out of the region regularly. And that is a 7 to 8 times multiplier is modest. I think we found that in Chandler it's closer to 11 proven, 11 jobs per. So, you know, it's going to be a high growth corridor for us for the foreseeable future.
So Matt's referring to Chandler, Arizona, and if you want to have a little fun, go onto YouTube and search Chandler, Arizona in the late 1970s, and it looks just like Johnstown. It's rural, it's spread out, it's agricultural. It was a rural outside suburb of Phoenix, and that's when Intel announced they were going there. 45 years later, 250,000 people live in and around Chandler, Arizona. It's become a metro region almost unto itself. So you need to brace ourselves. That's what New Albany, Johnstown, all Northeast could look like in another 40 or 50
It's
years.
completely encapsulated Intel, and that's why Intel needed to find another location because they just couldn't find more ground to grow in Chandler.
Which is amazing. Dave, this is right up your alley. You know, data analytics is, I won't say it's a recent phenomenon, but it's been taken to all new levels. I know what you do at Marcy is all data driven. How are data analytics shaping the strategic planning for Columbus's growth? How are you using data? And what types of data are you mining more recently than maybe you did in the past?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked it. And I think we're at a time now where everyone hopefully recognizes the importance of data and data analytics. You know, we all walk around spending much of our day with pocket computers with touchscreens on them, staring at constant streams of data of different types. So when we think about long-term strategic planning, one of the most important things is to know, again, where we are now. When I say where we are now, we're talking about population and demographics. We're talking about housing, we're talking about businesses, we're talking about roads and sidewalks and green spaces and air quality. So at Morpsey, these are all areas that we help convene local governments to plan for. We have our own long-term plans for our MPO area, Franklin and Delaware County, as well as our rural planning area, which is the counties surrounding Franklin and Delaware. But then communities have a lot of work to do, and we're there to help, as well as all of our other stakeholders. So formally on our team, we have data and research services, mapping services, and modeling services. So what is all that? Why do we need all those people? The data team is largely responsible for tracking what's happened and projecting what's going to happen next. So you saw those wonderful charts about what's going on. So if we're looking at our regional housing strategy, is it important to know that median household income increased by about 30% from 2017? Yeah. How does that context change when I tell you that median home sale price increased by 60% during the same time period? If I tell you one but not the other, it's a different story, right? The two relate. So the data team is looking at housing, population demographics, where people are working, where people are living. The mapping team, spatial aspects to what we do are so important. You've heard several references when we talked about where should those rapid transit lines be. That work goes all the way back 10 years ago. So there was a project called Insight 2050. Following out of that was something called the Corridor Concept Study. And following out of that are these bus rapid transit corridors to Central House. That's 10 years of work with lots of smart people at CODA, at Morpsey, at City of Columbus, Franklin County, Dublin communities along the way, working towards that. Modeling, just so you know, that's something that most of us are probably less familiar with, but that's how we run basically simulations, say how will traffic move, how will folks move. If we introduce a bus in a dedicated lane down this road, what happens, how does the bus get through? What happens to the vehicle traffic? How long does it take? How long will it take in 2050, right? So we gotta be looking ahead. So I can't understate the importance of using data, right? Otherwise, we're looking at anecdotes, we're guessing stories. So data is the most powerful tool that we have, and we should use it. Looking at a specific example here, something I'm very excited about on the horizon is passenger rail returning to Central Ohio. So you said, where was bus rapid transit 30 years ago? Well, what happened to passenger rail 50 years ago, right? So we want to bring it back. And we're looking at two lines, the 3C plus D, which means Cincinnati, Columbus, Cleveland, Dayton, and the east-west line, which would be Chicago, Fort Wayne, Columbus to Pittsburgh. That would technically make us a hub. How do we get this far? So you've seen this in the paper, it might be coming back. Data. Data about being one of the largest cities in the country without passenger rail service, right? That's an easy stat to get. How big are you? Do you have it, right? But then a lot more complicated things about looking at the routes, looking at the workforces along the way, the economic development impacts, collecting all the community and stakeholder input and buy-in and showing that, we're together on this, right? To make it happen. So, without data, I would say we're not looking at bringing passenger rail back. Without data, I would say we're not looking at having a great service like LinkUs. And so it's key to what we do. And I'll just put in some shameless plugs. There's lots of data on the Morpsey website. And we have various data groups that meet. So if you are a data nerd, you don't have to raise your hand, I won't call you out. Get on our website, email me. We'd love to see you come out and join our groups and engage with the community.
And that's morpc.org.
morpc.org, yes sir.
Kristen, you talked about the $2 billion terminal coming online. Your boss, Joe Nardoni, who's done a fantastic job since he's come here from Detroit, has said we might be a little ahead of schedule if we can be on this. So you're on the east side of town with all of that growth north of where the little northeast of where the airport is. with our increased population growth, which we've been talking about for the last half hour, a rise in travelers, adding a lot of direct flights, which you've done over the last 5 years or so. What other initiatives are the Regional Airport Authority implementing to enhance connectivity and capacity?
Well, capacity, I mean, we're building a new terminal, so that'll be covered, because if you've flown out with Southwest recently, they're out of Concourse A, and you know how tight it is. And they have the largest percentage of our passengers out of all the airlines right now. So they have about a third of our passengers flying. And if they can't grow, then that's not good, right? We never want to say no to a flight. We always want to say yes. So the first thing is making sure we have a place where they can expand and grow. So the new facility will be able to accommodate all of the airline growth. But I think really what's important is what usually people want to know, well, how do you attract new routes or new airlines? We have nearly all the airlines, but how do you attract that? And I'm gonna tell you a secret that's not so much a secret. Businesses like to what? Make money, right? Make money, save money, they like to make money. Airlines are businesses. And they have a limited number of resources, being the planes, the pilots, the crews. So they're going to go to the places that they can make the most money. So as we continue to grow, our growth will attract more market share for these airlines to keep flying. So as our community grows, as our population grows, all the data says it will, with all the new fabs, the Intels, and so many other businesses, we will continue to grow from a capacity. And so what our job is every day is to make sure the airlines know about that growth. They have great resources, they have great planning teams, but we want to be with them as much as possible, letting them know, hey, I know you don't see it in the data today, but Intel's going to be bringing 3,000 plus more people directly, and that equates to 21 more thousand people. We're telling them that story ahead of time so they can be prepared to meet that demand and that growth as it's happening, and they won't be behind.
Matt, the Intel story could be a book unto itself. And I'm sure the pipeline has maybe stepped up, increased a little bit because of landing the penultimate project in the country. How are you priming the pump, so to speak? And are you actually maybe looking, or I don't want to say neglecting, but not considering some projects because they may not be exactly what's best for the region?
Well, we'll always, so the only criteria that we really have as it relates to a project we'll work on is it has to be economic based, which means it's going to import wealth into our region. And not that we don't see value in those that circulate wealth. I'll give you a great example, Chipotle. When they were looking for a second regional headquarters, and they were based, I think, in LA. They had been elsewhere. The new CEO, he moved into LA, but they knew they couldn't scale there. They needed to find a city they could scale in. So they did a national search, and we won. And today they're in the Marine District. You see the big Chipotle sign. That's not a Chipotle restaurant. That's their
We're not 670.
So, that's an example of the type of project we will work on. We're not gonna help Chipotle find their next retail location, where they're gonna put their next store. And that's because we believe that if we focus on those economic-based jobs, that's gonna put wealth into our communities, and that's gonna be disposable income that'll drive, being able to get a Target in your community, being able to get a Chipotle in your community, those sorts of things. So that's the only real criteria we follow. We'll work with any company that meets that criteria. Now, we proactively are pursuing very specific sectors. And there's a couple, new ones. I have a great slide I should have brought it, but it talks about the sectors we're kind of pursuing, and it puts it into two contexts. Basically, our emerging sectors. This is things like semiconductors, EV, electric vehicles, and this is predominantly driven by Honda's transition from internal combustion engines to electric vehicles. And then another one is life sciences. Most people don't think about our market as a life science market. We are really strong in a couple key areas. Gene and cell therapies and pharma packaging. So think about Amgen, American Regents, and others that are basically packaging. We have some producers like PharmaLite that's doing vitamins. We have Abbott Nutrition here, but we have this growing cluster of gene and cell therapy companies, Amylin, Forge Biologics, the list goes on, Sarepta, and these are all companies that, 5 years ago weren't even really thought about as a potential attraction for us. And now they've been collectively in life sciences over the past, since 2021 probably, have invested over $1 billion collectively in our region. Again, that's projects like Amgen and PharmaLite and Sarepta. It's a cluster that has emerged. So that's another one that we're going after much more aggressively now. And then we have what we call our kind of incumbent sectors. Insurance, finance, IT is one. And obviously this is something we've always been a finance insurance sector, kind of capital. And IT is typically embedded in those organizations, really strong here. Our largest IT still today is JPMorgan Chase. They have about 17,000 employees, and most of them, many of them are in the software development IT space up at Polaris. So that's been a sector that's done very well for us, but it's also a sector that's going to be heavily impacted by AI. So we're monitoring it. We're not sure exactly the direction we're going to go. It might be a retention play for us in the future. We want to try to retain as many of those jobs as we can. And then we have a couple other sectors, the traditional automotive sector. I mentioned EV is a new kind of emerging sector for us. We're going to have some companies, and some of these could be devastating to our smaller rural communities. Every single one of our counties has at least one supplier of Honda, a significant supplier of Honda, a tier 1 supplier. We have a lot of companies that are producing exhaust systems, gas tanks, things you don't find, transmissions that you don't find on electric vehicles. And so we're likely going to lose some of these. But our goal is to replace them, help them transition, and maybe become an EV supplier. So that's part of our goal as well. And then obviously, we've had some traditional manufacturing, advanced manufacturing successes as well. It's kind of an incumbent sector for us. And we continue to work those sectors, but they're just not as aggressively pursuing the growth opportunities. It's kind of maintaining, and we'll take an opportunity when we can get it. And a great example, we had a win, it was counted last year, but actually we had a ribbon cutting, I don't know, maybe a month ago, Wells Fargo. They put a technology center here, servicing all of Wells Fargo's around the country, 350 jobs at Easton. That was an anomaly. Before the pandemic, we would have, 3, maybe 4 projects of 500 people or more magnitude in the office sector, typically insurance or finance, IT projects. They're not out there right now. So we've had to fit it a little bit.
Want to mention that PharmaVite makes Nature's Made vitamins. So when you see Nature's Made, it won't be very long. Those will be being produced in New Albany, which is exciting. Public transportation. Without getting overly granular, Esley, can you explain a little bit how the initial routes were decided upon for the new $8 billion transit system that we're going to have over the next couple of decades, and anticipating this incredible growth, especially Northeast?
Sure. One of the things, it was previously mentioned, right? So Insight 2050, the corridor study, there was 10 years of studying what was happening before there was actually action to it. And quite frankly, we were actually going to go to the ballot in 2022, but the time wasn't right. It didn't fit. What we did know, though, truly, was that most transit initiatives, ballot initiatives, passed during a presidential election. This one felt like it was going to be a nail-biter, quite frankly, just because people are feeling the hit of taxes. But we were really pleased with the outcome of that. So a lot of studying went in, and there were a lot of folks who data analytics. What's interesting about transit over the last 5 years in particular is that we've had to be nimble. And I don't think many of us would say in this room that they think transit's nimble, specifically public transit, right? But we've had to be because people worked from home in 2020, 2021, 2022. How many of you are getting called back to the office? How many of you have heard people getting called back to the office 3, 4, 5 days a week now, right? You're going to see a traffic pattern change again. You're going to see the dollar change, where people spend it. Before, when people were working from home, the dollar was circulating in their community, and now it's gonna be dispersed back into the community in a diverse way. So there's gonna be a lot of change that happens that CODA has to be nimble to. So one of the things that we cut and we were slow to bring back was our rush hour lines. Our rush hour lines were primarily in the suburbs, bringing people from the park and rides down. We actually had quite high ridership. 2019 was our highest ridership to date. And then obviously it just crashed to the ground. But we anticipate that coming back, with people now being called back into the office 3 to 5 times a week now, because people are gonna decide, do I wanna be back in that traffic? And that traffic is gonna feel way more like annoying to you now that you work from home, because you're gonna say to yourself, I took an extra, I took 45 minutes to get ready, now I'm in the car, I could have been at work, I might, at home, and so I feel like we're gonna feel a little bit of pain with seeing people on our freeways and our side streets. So ideally, when we're building something like this, and what it looks like is, we have to be more focused on data. We need to be more focused, we're actually in the AI game, we're thinking about predictive analytics. When can we anticipate potentially an accident happening, and how does CODA reroute such that those people on the vehicle don't feel the pain of an accident? Whereas the predictive analytics will say there's a potential for an accident here in about 45 minutes due to all these factors, and then we kind of reroute them. So we've got to be thinking based off of what we know, but we've got to be thinking about what we anticipate too, the behavior change of people in our community.
One of the things I've taken to doing in that 23-mile commute from Dublin to downtown is counting out-of-state license plates as an economic development indicator. And the busiest morning, there were 12 out-of-state license plates, and I think 2 from Ontario, which is incredible. Just an indication of how many commuters we have who are new to town and our continued growth. Let's talk about cooperation. Dave, you had mentioned the Columbus Way, and there really is something to do to that. When the Chamber does talk to a lot of the leaders of the companies that One Columbus has brought into the community, they talk about it was so seamless to come here. We had more collegiality and cooperation coming to the Columbus region than we've had compared to so many other cities and communities around the country. It was really, really great. So MORPC, we've got a planning organization really representing municipalities, the Airport Authority, the Economic Development Juggernaut, and our public transportation. I'd like to briefly talk about the collegiality and cooperation. And it's not perfect. We don't want to make it sound like Camelot, but it certainly is better than a lot of other places around the country. Dave?
Yeah, absolutely. So, first I would say that it's probably a lot more like Camelot than people think from the outside. So when you read the papers and you follow, national political events, things like this, it gives you a sense of maybe what you think happens inside those rooms or between different government officials, that kind of thing. And what I've experienced, I've been working in public nonprofit sector in Central Ohio for a little over 20 years now, is folks want the same things, and that gets you a long way. They want to maintain what we have, right? We have a very great quality of life here in Central Ohio. So on the one hand, with the challenges, we've got a lot to lose. We also recognize that with growth and working together, we have a lot to gain. We can do better. So I think what I see is people really coming to the table. As was mentioned earlier, MORPC is an association of 88 local governments in a 15-county region. So when we say a Central Ohio region, we mean really the middle of the state. There are a lot of formal and informal ways that we collaborate. So we have what's called our commission. So where there's joint planning needed and funding's on the line, folks come together with plans, subcommittees to propose all that and take it to the full commission for approval. And that's how, as a collective, we decide what's gonna happen, how's that money gonna be spent, especially when it comes to transportation projects. But informally, there's a lot more going on. So when it comes to our partners in the nonprofit sector, all sorts of collaborative initiatives going on there. Same thing for our academics, our higher ed institutions. We have a great ecosystem of colleges and universities in Central Ohio. We rely on them a lot for their research, for their insights, for their partnership, and private sector as well. So we are recently, in my organization, in an unusual space of being a subcontractor for a giant consultant because they needed that data team for what we do. So we're used to picking them, right, for to subcontract out for grants, but in this case, they were coming to us, and that was a great project. We were happy to contribute to the regional water study. If you've been following that, you've heard the criticality of water for our growth. So, you know, I think what I see is folks willing to step outside their lane a little bit as we realize how things are interconnected, and other folks willing not to be as territorial as you might expect when someone comes to you and say, hey, you need to hear about this, or we need to talk about this. This is going to impact this other thing that I'm working on, right? Or we think we can help you, right? So I see a lot of common ground and good faith efforts. You know, I'm coming to you because we want the same thing. How can we work together? And frankly, I'm super encouraged by it. I would say that you know, I would describe the vibe in most of the rooms as purple, right? You know, and that's good, right? That's common ground. We can work with that.
Kristen, took a lot of parties to come together for this new terminal project.
Yeah, and even, so I when you were talking, I was even just thinking, well, we use your data in One Columbus just to figure out what capacity we need for the future of the terminal. Population growth, economics, we partnered with the airlines, you know, while nobody has a crystal ball, we all have different forecasting, so we want to use the best data that we have. And so it's been so awesome to be able to work together and support one another. But I'll tell you, boots on the ground also matter, and we get that all the time, especially when we're going after air service opportunities. Whether it's Matt or Kenny McDonald from his team coming with us on those visits, either overseas or other domestic airlines, to say, we do need these new routes, and this is why, and we have folks here in the room to talk to you about it directly. That really makes a difference.
Oh, maybe I'll stay on the line, because we're engaged with all the organizations that are represented here pretty regularly. So with MORPC, we co-sponsored the SEDS, a comprehensive economic development strategy that was developed. And this basically enables our community to compete for federal funds through the DEA. So for example, when Bell Fountain had the tornado come through, because we had a SEDS, because we had an economic development strategy, they were able to then designate that as an area, and they could receive special services. If we didn't have a SEDS, that probably would not happen. So we work with MORPC, they hold the SEDS agreement, and they have a staff person, which we partially fund as well. So we have a tight connection with them specifically on this economic development strategy. Kristen mentioned the work we do with them as it relates to air service development. And that's a very tight relationship. Kenny's on the airport board. So, you know, we are always there, not just for passenger service, but also cargo service, which is critically important. Rickenbacker is a cargo dedicated airport. It's also under the purview of the Columbus Regional Airport Authorities. So we're connected with them on the cargo side, and driving the development of potential new flights there, as well as passenger flights. And then obviously with CODA, we brought the business community to the table as it relates to Link Us. They presented at a number of our events. We were, you know, adamant about getting the word out there, and not just because we think it's the right thing. It's a necessary thing for us. We're going to have to develop now. All these communities that are along these corridors are basically going to have to rethink their development strategy. So we're working closely with them now, so that, you know, maybe you have a defunct strip center in a community, you know, in Reynoldsburg, or someplace that's going to be on the line, and, you know, they'll be able to basically, you know, rezone that for maybe mixed use get some housing there, be right next to the line, and provide great access to transportation for working class people. So, these are all just a couple examples of how we're engaged with just everyone here. And obviously, we're engaged with a lot of other great organizations as well.
Kathleen, collegiality and cooperation.
Link Us would not have happened if it was not in partnership with the city, the county, WARPC, and the Columbus Partnership, not to mention all of the municipalities, because we had to go to all of these mayors and say, we need you to believe in this, and we need you to help inform community members about this, because some communities may say, well, I don't know why this would be important to me, right? What am I getting for it? And we did have, this was 5 years in the making in terms of knowing we were gonna go to the ballot, but we had to convince a lot of mayors, like this is worth, putting your chip in for this. And a lot of them said, I want more. And we had to go back to the table and say, okay, what else makes sense in this community? What else, is it CODA Plus? Is it a fixed route? Is it a BRT? Is it a sidewalk? What does that look like? Our friends at WARPC are doing tremendous work with the transit supportive infrastructure, which is the sidewalks, bikeways, and trails. So it would not have happened without collaboration, in addition to seeking federal funds, right? We need, in order to draw down, now we don't know what's gonna happen with that bucket of money, but there was $850 million that we were gonna be able to draw down to support this. So there's some work to do on that side now, but that was because of collaboration.
If you don't think that this is important, your chamber is part of the Ohio Metro Chambers Coalition. It's the 8 largest metro regions in the state and the Ohio Chamber. We meet monthly. And the CEO of the Youngstown Chamber told us a story just a few months ago. Youngstown landed a South Korean video screen manufacturing company. Huge for Youngstown, 400 high-paying jobs. We'll use a lot of water. The water had to be brought in through 2 municipalities. The 2 municipalities got into a public argument over which one was going to supply the water to this new facility. This is coming from our Youngstown Chamber CEO, talking about it publicly. And what ended up happening was the leaders of this South Korean company went back to Korea and they said, they didn't say, don't do business in Youngstown. They said, don't do business in Ohio. It's just ridiculous. That would have never happened here. That would have never happened. The municipalities would have gotten together. Now here's a 35-year journalist saying, it's better that these things are taken care of behind the scenes instead of publicly. And that water would have been supplied, and the municipalities would have probably split the revenue, the cost of supplying that water to the facility. But these partnerships are just so very, very important to all of these economic development issues. Matt will tell you absolutely that when Intel picked 30 sites, they put 30 sites around the country for this new facility. The Columbus region was not one of them. We were 31 of 30. Jobs Ohio, One Columbus, all of our leaders had to go, including the governor, had to go to Intel and say, wait, don't overlook us. We've got something special going here. We've got the land, we've got the resources, the water, we'll be able to handle this. And we started as 31 out of 30. Great story, don't have enough time today to explain it all, but how we came down from being 31 of 30 to 1 out of 31. We want to open it up for some questions from all of you. Kaylee's going to walk around with a microphone, and would anyone like to ask a question? Paul.
Thank you, Don. Appreciate it. Paul Perkins, Columbus resident pretty much all my life. I'm also the CEO of Orion Electronics, which is a consumer electronic company headquartered here in Columbus, Ohio. We develop smart electric bikes right now. So really our goal is to make cities more sustainable and more innovative and at the consumer level. So if you can get consumers to buy into sustainable products, then we'll be a sustainable community. And so right now we're starting with e-bikes, obviously because America has a transportation problem. And Columbus obviously is unique in that spectrum. So our question is just really about what are we doing from a sustainability perspective. I love the BRTs, but if they're gas powered, are we thinking about electric, buses? I know that there was some funding for electric buses, but I just wanted to know about that. And then private-public partnerships. What does that look like for companies like myself that are here in Columbus? Intel is great, Facebook is great, designed some of those data centers, working for Turner. Really awesome, but where are we going to really support the companies here that are trying to make Columbus and other cities in America more innovative and more sustainable?
CODA will be diesel-free by 2025, below next year. And by 2035, we plan on being net carbon zero, net zero. We just won a $40 million grant from the federal government for a hydrogen fuel cell. The corridors we anticipate being electric. All of our vehicles, so next year, all of our vehicles will be either electric or CNG. And I'll be honest with you, we're having some issues with our electric vehicles, partly because one, they don't get the same range as a diesel vehicle, right? Those diesel vehicles leave our yard and they don't come back until the end of the night. Those electric vehicles need to come back, get charged, go back out, right? And so they're not cheap. And we know as technology advances, it'll become easier and the charge will be longer. So that's our plan going forward. We also, all of our facilities, we're looking at LEED Platinum. We know that transportation, cars are one of the biggest emitters of our pollution. And so we have a responsibility to lower that in any way possible, especially because we go through communities that have hot zones, and those zones are because there's not enough trees, because we emit so much, all of that. So there's a huge initiative behind CODA to make sure that we have that. We have a new CEO, she's still very much focused on that. I want to plug being a startup. So I once owned a company called Empower Bus, and it was a microtransit company, and my dream was to actually be acquired by CODA, and I was actually in an M&A, like with a company where I was going to go and be the president of it, and the pandemic happened, and I didn't make the turn. I had to make a decision. I had just bought my business partner out, like, oh my gosh, what do I do? And long story short, I then went to work for CODA. CODA has a big vision. We're innovative, but we don't have the ability to acquire any company right now because we're quasi-public and all that sort of stuff. But I would say, I think that's where public transit should get really smart. You should start thinking about acquiring businesses that have the sustainability, that have the flexibility, because we don't always have the capacity. Now we're doing some third-party consulting, and we have some third parties come in and do some of our transit for microtransit. But I would love to see public transit start thinking about acquisition of these sustainable, flexible transit models, so that you could see cities become more like Europe, right? We're not gonna do it on our own. If we wanna go faster, we need to start thinking about that. We're not there yet, public transit's not there yet, but I hope to see in the near future where public transit would do some of this sort of work so that we can go quicker, be more nimble.
Great. Matt, do you look at sustainability when you're considering an economic development project?
Well, yes, maybe back up a little bit. Our sister organization, Smart Columbus, obviously has sustainable goals, and they're working on a lot of the charging infrastructure, the electric bikes program for the city of Columbus. That's kind of where the rubber meets the road, and as a sister organization, that's their lane. But yeah, absolutely. So, right now, I mentioned we have a pretty aggressive pipeline. We have 99 active projects in our pipeline, and we have a handful of them that are electric infrastructure companies. These are companies that have next generation transformers, next generation power lines are insulated, so there's a lot less power loss over the lines. And I know that's not changing maybe the mix of fuels that are powering it, but it's going to make us much more reliable as a power grid. And then obviously, we do have some wins as well. Actually, our largest win last year was Illuminate USA. It's the largest solar panel manufacturer assembly plant in the country. It's right out in Licking County, just north of 70. And they committed to 850 jobs, and I think about $285 million in capital investment. We just met with them. There are 1,400 people, and they've been operational for just over a year. 1,400 people. Those are some examples of the kinds of projects we're absolutely pursuing, and obviously we've also been very supportive of the solar projects around our region, which have received a lot of pushback from some of the communities. Some of the counties have created kind of no-go zones for utility level solar, which is I think over 50 megawatts. But we've been trying to educate them on, these should be viewed on a case-by-case scenario. You should not say, we're not going to do any solar. That's ridiculous. But that's an education process for us.
Matt also made two references earlier to the Honda LG partnership, and that's the same LG company that makes TVs and appliances and everything else. That's going to be in Jeffersonville, and they're going to make batteries for the automotive and commercial transportation industry. Right. And when is that coming up?
It should be coming up here pretty soon. I think construction's about done, equipment's being set. 3,500 jobs, I think, or no, 2,500 jobs and $3.5 billion investment. More importantly, this is part of the whole transformation of the industry. They're just going to be developing the envelopes there. I think when we think about a Honda battery plant, you think of like a Tesla Gigafactory where they're basically sending a finished battery out. They're actually just going to be doing the envelopes, which is a replacement of a cell. Think about that. It'd be like if you either use a cell or an envelope. And they're going to ship those to Marysville. And they're going to be built in line when the car's being built. They're going to build their own battery cases, their own battery management systems, and they're going to merge the two. And they just announced that they're actually going to talk about innovation. This is crazy innovation. I think they're the first automotive manufacturer to do this. They'll be building electric vehicles in line with internal combustion engine vehicles. So they don't have just a dedicated EV line. Most companies have a dedicated EV line and a dedicated internal combustion engine. They've engineered a way to be able to develop either electric vehicle or an ICE vehicle, internal combustion engine vehicle, in line. So they aren't going to be limited by orders. If the EV market picks back up, like we fully anticipate it will, they're going to be prepared. They don't have to make any tooling adjustments. So they're going to produce those cars and replace the ICE vehicles that they currently are making. So it's talk about innovation. That's true innovation.
Kristen, on sustainability?
Well, I was just going to add really quickly, one of the cool things that actually when Coda got their electric vehicles started, we at the airport, much smaller fleet, we had to purchase vehicles to go to our new rental car facility, and we ended up purchasing the same types of vehicles specifically so that our maintenance teams could collaborate with one another, which was really helpful. We'll have EV chargers in the new parking garage that'll be connected to the new terminal. But I would also say when we think about sustainability, to take a step back, and one of the things that I think we all could be looking a little bit different or harder at is looking at the sustainability of our communities on a much broader scale. So when we procure items, whether a small business, a large business, we're constructing things, how can we procure them from local, small, diverse businesses? That will really focus, to me, more on sustainability in a much broader sense. And that's one of the things that we did with the new terminal. We set a very aggressive goal of having 25% of those businesses working on the terminal's construction, at least 25% would be small, local, diverse businesses.
Your Chamber of Commerce loves that, Kristen. Absolutely. Question?
I'll make it short but still working.
Good
morning. My name is Jerrica Fletcher. I am the CEO and founder of Paul Long Good. We are the only woman-owned holistic pet care company. We specialize in making organic potato chips for dogs. So as we continue to think about all of the new things that is coming to Columbus, and thank you guys so much for your support, What innovative strategies do you guys have to support all of the new employees, residents that will be traveling with their pets, not only in the airport as well as in CODA? And then, do you have any data and analytics to support the influx of pets that we can see with all of these new developments?
Well, thank you for being at the airport, first of all.
Yes, I am at the airport.
You can purchase her goods at our retail locations at the airport. But it's one thing in our current facility we don't do a very good job of, and I can visibly see when I walk through the terminal, more and more people are bringing pets or service animals. It's just more common. So in the new terminal, we will have way better facilities. They will be very clean, they will be hygienic, and they will be easily accessible to all pet owners. I know that does not exist really well today.
We don't have any data on how many folks bring service animals, but we do have them, and primarily those are the animals that we welcome on vehicles is service animals. I don't actually know the question of that. I'll have to go back and ask our team. I mean, I'm thinking about getting my son a puppy in a few years, so, but I don't know. I'll have to go and ask our team that. I don't think we have a plan around that. I know our mobility folks, they work a lot with our folks with disabilities and folks that have service animals because they've been qualified for mobility, but I don't have a line of sight on that, so I'm happy to get back to you on it.
Are people currently traveling with their pets?
Yes,
Okay, is there any restrictions or anything around that right now?
so I would say there's a restriction on making sure that they're service animals, not pets. But I don't think it's very highly enforced is what I'll say, because I know that we have our operators say, I don't know whether that was a pet or a service animal. So I don't know, we don't have, again, I don't think we have a line of sight whether it's a service animal or a pet. If somebody says something to our operators say something, they probably will say it's a service animal. We have no way to verify that.
Questions? Anyone else? Yes.
You talked about the house prices versus the salaries. And I suspect those house prices didn't include property tax, which is kind of, well, we found it kind of steep when we moved here from the south. What's the solution? You can't really go to an employer and say, oh, you've got to increase, all of your employees' salaries by 30%, so they can get a house. So what's the solution to the house price versus the salary disparity?
Well, there's a lot that we can do. I wish there was a single solution, but I'd say that part of why we might be seeing some of those increased median household incomes is due to the increased cost of living rate. People need to kind of demand a wage that will allow them to maintain their lifestyles, and most people are looking for. But for solutions on housing, right? So one thing that I think we've all established is there's a supply shortage, right? So just going back to kind of your basic economics, supply and demand. If you don't have enough supply, right, prices are going to go up. So we need to build more. And the other thing we need to attend to is, as we build more, and as we look at creative ways to incentivize more building, right? Because it's not occurring at the level we want right now, which means we need to do something, right? And that's on governments, that's on builders, that's on large employers to see how they can get in the mix. If you look around the country, you'll see creative examples of really large employers, and even in medium-sized or large markets, trying to do something to address that workforce housing issue in their community. So when I say, not just more, we're looking at different types of housing so folks have options, and especially addressing that affordability concern, right? So as much as that might look like a tough sell for someone who's, they pay that much more for the house and the taxes on top of it, we have folks at our lower incomes who are really struggling right now. So we did a survey recently of Central Ohioans and found that of households earning $35,000 or less, right? So depending on how many people in that household, that puts them around the poverty level. It could be many of them below the poverty level. 50% are sacrificing food right, to pay their rent or mortgage, and over a third were sacrificing clothing, behind on utility payments, or car payments, maintenance, things like that, right? So they're really struggling. So those are the folks I'm most worried about. You know, we want to keep our competitive advantage, and we all want to maintain our quality of life and our cost of living. But for those folks right now, it is a housing crisis for them today, not in 2050. So my solution is, you know, what that looks like for different communities varies in terms of how they embrace mixed-use development and density. But I would say the less land we can use, the less we can run out utilities, closer we can be to transit. We start to tackle some of these problems together, right? So we have those more affordable units and those multifamily units. We can give those folks different ways to get around without having as much of a negative impact on the environment. Yeah, and there's a webinar series that we've been co-hosting with CURA, the Center for Urban Research and Analysis at Ohio State. It's a fall series. There's 2 more to go. There's one on Friday, so if you go on OSU's website, there's one on Friday, and there's one more in December, so you can catch the last 2 in that series. Also, I point you to MORPC.org's website and look at Insight 2050 and our regional housing strategy. Lots of recommendations in there.
Yeah, I would just like to add, I mean, I don't think it's a silver bullet, but we need more inventory. That's absolutely the case. If we have more inventory, the prices will come down. We need inventory across the board. We need more senior housing, for example. We need more retirement community type housing so that people can actually move out of their current homes and into the next home, especially if you're going to be retiring, because that'll free up a larger home for a family that's growing. You know, I just did a presentation with a couple developers and the Ohio Board of Realtors, and they said that the Columbus region had 24,000 homes listed before the pandemic. 24,000 homes. I think it was like 2019 maybe, and that was for the year. Last year we had 11,000. So it's not even just the new inventory that we need. We need the new inventory to free up some of our existing homes, which can be typically acquired at a lower price point. But you know, they're just not there either. So it's kind of a double-edged sword for us. And we also we need a lot more apartments. But I mentioned we peaked in 2002 with 16,000 units. It was about 70% single-family homes, 30% multifamily. Today, with about 12,000, it's over 60%, almost 70% multifamily, and 30% single family. So, you know, that kind of, I think we're going in the right direction as it relates to more multifamily, but we can't do it at risking the availability of single family as well.
How long do you think it'll take?
It's going to take probably 10 years, I think, to get us back on track. And you know, we tracked it in Indianapolis. I don't want to take all the time, but just some interesting points. We've been tracking Indianapolis. Indianapolis looks a lot like us on paper. Very similar sized city, very similar sized metropolitan area, and they've been producing 15,000 residential units over the past decade, consistently 15,000 units. So they have thousands of extra units now online in the past decade than we have had. Their prices have remained stable. They have a good mix. About 17% of their permits are in the city of Indianapolis. Over 50% of our permits are in the city of Columbus. So it's really the suburbs that we really need to get on board with doing more. And it's not just the outer suburbs. It's even the inner suburbs that still have some ground and some availability because of utilities. So we really need to do. So I'd encourage you guys, you know, if you're active in your city councils, village councils, you know, if you own a business, you probably need more rooftops. That's how you're going to grow your business, right? And if you're in a city that's anti-growth or throwing off even, you know, the slightest hint that they may not want growth, you know, I would encourage you guys to kind of show up and support when there is a apartment complex or a townhome complex, because those are actually, you know, they have disposable income just like a regular home would.
Something else with all the economic development we've had, all the successes, we've also been discovered by these corporate home purchasers, these big national corporations that have been formed to come in, and they're buying a lot of single-family homes, and they're driving up the costs because they're seeing the profitability in either flipping or renting single-family homes for a period of time and then selling them. And it's contributed to the driving up costs in our residential real estate considerably. Why don't we end with one more question that we've prepared. I want to thank our team for preparing these great questions. We didn't even get through half of them. But with the growth impacting every sector, all of our lives, everything that's going on here, if each of you can take a step back and look at 2035, we're on the verge of 2025, 10 years from now, from your organization standpoint and any general feelings you may have about the community at large in the Columbus region. Tell us about CODA in 2035.
In 2035, you'll have 3 of the corridors open. So you'll be seeing those rapid transit corridors. We'll have at least 4 of the 8 CODA Plus zones going. And quite frankly, we'll be thinking about probably different ways to impact transit. And so I think I would love to see, 10% of our community riding public transit, but I know that means people have to feel it's safe, it's efficient, it's on time every time, right? And we have to guarantee that for people. So that's what I want to see in 2035, is everybody feels that CODA is a safe, on time, every time option for them. Maybe it's not every day. Today I'm not going to drive, I'm going to drive my car because my kid needs to go here, but maybe every, 2 or 3 times a week I'm going to use it because I just need to get to work and get back. And then I can hop in my car if I have a vehicle, right? So I really want us to be able to be the right option for everybody.
What percentage are you now?
Right now, post-pandemic, we're about 3 to 5%. Yeah.
2035, man.
Well, Intel will be open, and we're hopefully going to have multiple phases announced by then, at least in the next phase, would be my guess. And there's so much opportunity there. That is a game-changing project. It's going to change the trajectory of our entire region, just like Honda did 40 years ago. The supply chain is going to bring with them the 50+ tier 1 companies.
So those are direct suppliers.
Direct suppliers.
50 direct suppliers. Then suppliers to the suppliers.
Tier 2, Tier 3 suppliers, which may already exist in our region, or at least in the state of Ohio, but they're not going to grow. We've technically announced 2 suppliers already, and that's it. So there is a litany of additional suppliers to be announced. We anticipate that next year will be the year we're going to open the first fabs. That will be supplier year for us. And we think we maybe have 10 to 15 additional projects directly related to Intel that otherwise would not have been in our pipeline.
And this is not just that area. We had Industrial Parkway closed for 2 months this summer in northwest Dublin and moving into ensuing counties for an Amazon project. They got Amazon, huge Amazon distribution center. Kristen, you'll have a $2 billion terminal open in 10 years.
Yeah, and so if you ask most people what they think about the airport today, one of the first words that comes to mind is, it's easy. I want the first word or feeling that people have when they come to the airport in 2035 is pride, an immense set of pride. Because it is going to be a beautiful front door to not just Columbus, but we serve 33 counties in the state of Ohio as our primary airport. So we want to be a beautiful front door to the region. So any business potentially looking to come in here, or a new resident looking to come to our region, they feel by just looking around at the concessions, oh, local, this is what it feels like to be in Columbus. In the region. So I just hope there's an immense set of pride, and I hope the place is bustling and we're nearly ready to expand again.
I have many hopes for 2035.
Oh wait, sorry, I have to add one more thing. And we have at least one transatlantic flight, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Can't miss that.
No one asked you that today.
I don't know.
I have many hopes for 2035, some of which are tied up in the aspirations that my fellow panelists shared. And I would say that in one word, it would be greater connectedness. Greater connectedness. And what I mean by that is that we'll have folks who are able to access and afford the things that we all want, right? So we'll have folks walking and biking. We'll have folks able to charge their EVs who are taking that step to reduce their emission conveniently around Central Ohio at the airport and after they leave the airport. We'll have folks able to choose where they want to live, where they want to work, and take a bus rapid transit to get to the other side of town, regardless of what traffic looks like, on the highway. We keep working, so things we hope that you'll see. So trains, right? I want to take a train to Chicago. I want to take a train to Cleveland. How exciting is that? You might be able to go down to the convention center in one of our nearby neighborhoods and get on a train, right? So many folks haven't been able to do since I think 1979. So planes, trains, buses, biking and walking, cars too, right? The more other folks are using all those forms of transportation, the fewer cars are in your way if you're driving, right? So it's good for everyone whether you use it or not. And I expect we'll continue to make strides on environmental sustainability. So we have many great partners, teams dedicated to that. You should see the enthusiasm. About a week ago, we had almost 800 local leaders like yourselves all day giving up their entire workday at the downtown hill to talk about environmental sustainability. So many business leaders leaning in to see what they can do. So many public officials starting great programs on that, from their purchasing to their operations to their long-term planning. So I think we'll have a greener, more connected Central Ohio, and I hope you guys can be a big part of that.
Dave Dixon from Morrissey, the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission. Kristen Easterday, the Director of Communications, Columbus Regional Airport Authority. Matt McAllister, Executive Vice President from One Columbus. And Esleen Rodriguez from CODA, the Senior Director of Regional and Strategic Partnerships. I'm Don DeGuro from your Columbus Chamber of Commerce. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. Greatly appreciate it. And please join me in thanking our great panel.